Layers. They're everywhere, and I'm gonna tell you where you can find them. 7-layer burritos. Inception. Shrek. Paintings. If you're an artist, then you've painted, and there's layers of paint. You know what? The thing that you live on. Earth. Did I already say Shrek? Oreos. Duh. Plywood. It's in your house. It's in the walls. Don't get paranoid, but it's there. Makeup. In Photoshop, layers are your best friend. Honestly, if you don't use layers, then you are not using Photoshop correctly. So in today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to use the layers panel, and it's going to be a breeze. I'll see you in just a sec. Alright guys, so getting right back into it, what we're going to do is open Photoshop. And again, if you don't have Photoshop, it's just a click away. Go to adobe.com, search Photoshop, and you can get it for as little as $10.99 a month. I am not sponsored by Adobe, but if you're listening, I am happy to do that. So, first thing we're going to do after we get Photoshop open is we'll open up our browser, and we're going to go right back to Unsplash.com. And again, I'm just going to find a few images, 2 images, so that I can show you what the layers can do in terms of blending modes, which we'll get to. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Let's see, what would be cool? Ooh, moody. So, zoom in, I right click and copy. Now, one thing I failed to go over last time, because I figured the tools took up enough time, is a trick to have your documents open to the exact size of an image from the web. And it's pretty easy. All you're going to do is right click, copy image, go back to Photoshop, and when you hit Control N, it'll bring up the window like we had last time, only now instead of paper as the preset, you'll see that it says clipboard. What that means is it took the dimensions of the image that we just copied into our clipboard, and now we have that exact dimension in pixels, including the resolution, which for screen is 72. But you know me, I like to have things in higher quality, so I'm going to change that to 300, just kind of the print norm. So I'm going to have that set. RGB is fine, white background is fine, so we will click OK. Okay. And now you hit Control V to paste it. Look at that. Fits exactly, which is what we're going for. So Alt Tab, let's go back to Unsplash, find one more picture. And again, you can, who knows when you're watching this if these images are the same or not. Probably not, because this updates frequently. But just find 2 random images, like this one. I'm gonna copy it, Alt Tab, and paste, Control V. Okay, now I have my 2 images. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the Layers tab. I'm going to keep this over here the whole time we're recording so that you can see what I'm talking about right on screen. Actually, I'll put it right here so that my face isn't blocking it. My face. On the Layers tab, we're going to go from top to bottom, and I'm going to tell you exactly what each part of this does. So if we go to the top here under Kind, where it shows this here, this is a way to filter through your layers, which we'll get into more detail as we go down the road on some of our techniques when we get into actual photo editing. But say one of these I have set to a blending mode of multiply, and I want to find that layer. Say if we had like 45 layers and only one of them was set to multiply, like what I just did, I can go to Kind, go to Mode, search for multiply, and it will bring up that layer. So if you're trying to find a specific layer, this is a really quick way to sift through all of that stuff. And that includes your filters. So you can filter for pixel layers, which essentially means if it's raster or if it's a picture. You can also do adjustment layers, which we will get to shortly. Text layers, shapes, and then filter or smart objects. That's just a really good way for you to find layers that you're looking for. You're not going to have a lot of trouble right now since we have 2, count them, 2 layers, 2, so we aren't going to need this, but in the future it will be helpful. Next, moving on down. So before, when I said multiply, what I was talking about was the blending mode. The blending mode can be found right here. It's always going to say normal as a like a default, but all of these different modes will blend that layer with layers that are underneath. So you can see as I cycle through these, there's different effects of blending on the city layer with the layer beneath, with our figure. All of which have pretty cool effects. It just depends on what you're looking for. Another good way to categorize these is normal and dissolve. You won't see any difference here. Dissolve essentially takes gradual transitions, like the gradient from our last video, from full color to transparent, and instead of it being smooth, it'll make it look like spray paint, like old Microsoft Paint spray paint, like a bunch of dots. And then here, starting with darken, all of these pieces here to this line darken that layer. Then we go to lighten, and all of these will have lightening effects. Not like that, but like lightening. Those are good for anything that you want to brighten up. Overlay, again, this kind of takes more of the contrast and saturation of all of the colors and evenly distributes them. So you have soft light, hard light. At the end of the day, with blending modes, you just play around with whatever one you think fits best. And then you can assign it. So for me, tell you what, let's just stick with multiply for now. So I'm going to do multiply there and just keep that. Next up is opacity and fill. These are right next to the blending modes, and you can find it by looking right on the screen where it says opacity and fill. And underneath each of these, you'll see different percentages. 100% on opacity means we can actually see it. 0 means it's transparent. So if I select layer 1 and I turn the opacity down to 50%, notice how he's transparent now. So this is a kind of like a blending mode, only it, strictly speaking, just turns the transparency down. It kind of ghosts it a little bit. And fill, the main difference between opacity and fill is that fill will take the content of the layer and essentially make the pixels transparent, but it won't affect the blending mode or anything else tied to your layer. So fill only affects the pixels. Opacity will affect the entire layer, blending mode included. Moving down to the next section here where it says lock, I'll give you one guess as to what that does. If we select a layer, we can actually lock the transparency, the image pixels, position, and nesting and artboards and frames, or we could just lock the entire thing. More often than not, I tend to just lock my layer. So when I click that, you see the icon pop up, meaning that this is now locked. So if I grab my brush and I try to paint on this, it's a good sound. It says, could not use the brush tool because the layer is locked. That's good. So if you ever need to, this is a great way to keep your layers from not being destroyed. It will be a reminder like, oh, I should create a new layer, and now I can do a brush on top of it and give him some blue hair. Beautiful. If you ever need to go back, you just simply click, and now it's unlocked. Easy peasy. All right, next up is simply controlling the layers themselves. Say if I didn't like my blue hair, but I wanted to keep it around, I could just hit the eye icon right next to it. If I click that, it hides the layer, which can be nice if you just want to keep something around. You can also reposition layers. So let's say that I didn't have a blending mode on my city, and I wanted to make the background transparent on the figure, but I couldn't see him. So I could click and drag that up until it shows these blue lines here, meaning that I'm going to drop it above the city layer. This will be a quick preview. You guys remember the magic wand from the last time? Thanks to the same background being all one color, I can quickly select almost everything. Then I can go to the layer, and this will actually go right into the next part that we should talk about, which are these guys down here at the bottom. These are quick ways to affect your layer. So we have layer styles, layer masks, adjustment layers, groups, new layers, and trash. So what I'm going to do, since I selected all of this, is I'm just going to mask everything else. So I click Add Layer Mask while I'm on layer 1. Bada bing, bada boom. But the nice thing about this is you'll notice it created a new thumbnail right next to the image. That is our layer mask. Essentially, Photoshop reads, on a layer mask level anyway, it reads black as hidden, white as showing. So if I grab my brush and I were to paint black on my mask, then it acts like an eraser. But that looks terrible. So I'm gonna hit X to switch my color to white. And now, if I go back and paint where I went over, I can paint back in what I did because it's masked. It's not erased, it's simply hiding. There's also effects. We could use this drop down and add a specific effect, or you can double click the layer kind of on the right side over here. That will open up this, which is your layer styles menu. And you can add a whole bunch of different effects to your entire piece if you want. We'll definitely go into more detail about this down the road with a text effects kind of tutorial. But this is here. You can play around with it. It's fun. It works really well with text. Okay, and adjustment layers. This is a non-destructive way to add adjustments to your layer without destroying the pixels. And when I say destroying, I mean like an unchangeable thing. Like you'd have to Control Z back, and if it was too far away from where you made the change, it's permanent. So instead of that, we just use a layer. So I'm going to use the curves adjustment, and you see it creates a new layer above the image. And if I want that to affect only that layer, I'm going to have to do a few things, because right now, if I drag the curve around, it's changing the lighting elements for the entire picture. So say I just wanted it to affect my figure. It's really easy. All we do is hold Alt and hover between both layers. See how my icon changes to that square with a down arrow? I'm going to put a picture of it right here. Ready? And that's what it should look like. So you're going to click as soon as you see that icon. And lo and behold, now we have an arrow icon showing that this adjustment is now anchored to that layer by itself. So whatever changes I make are only happening to that layer. Very helpful, but also say down the road I don't want it anymore. This is why it's non-destructive. I can just hit the eyeball because I'm just going to hide it. And now we're back to where it was to begin with. If you want to group all of these, so say I liked how this all looked and I planned on adding some other stuff, I can click on the bottom layer, so layer 2 in this case, go to the top including my adjustment by holding Shift and clicking. And with all 3 of those highlighted, I can hit Control G to group them and then name that group. Base image. Whoa, what if I can type? There we go. And you can group these or ungroup them, but it doesn't mean your layers disappeared. You just hit this down arrow, and there they are. It's a great way to organize, especially if you get on big projects where you have hundreds of layers. This is key. Finally, you have the new layer icon. Creates a new layer. And then if I don't want layers, I can click and drag them on down to the trash. And there they go. Really, all of these options here that you see at the bottom are also found in layer on the menu. However, it's just depending on what you like. Old school designers are going to like going to this menu that's kind of a knee-jerk, but this is made just for ease so that you can access all of your layer adjustments, your effects, your masks much quicker, much more rapidly. But besides that, guys, that's really the smash and grab quick tutorial on the layers tab. We'll definitely be using this a lot, so don't be worried. You'll be hearing this again and again and again. It's all about repetition. Alright guys, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Please make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. This is a new channel, so all the support you can give is wonderful. Please spread the word to anybody who's trying to learn some Photoshop or is into the other stuff that we have going on at this channel. Again, I'm Kevin Allen, and this was technically something. See you guys later.